be and understand a little about China and lived in China and speak Chinese, I'm pretty friendly with China.
Fostering cooperation amongst people in China and the United States on their own, understanding that these are the things that tie us together.
So I don't fall into the category that China necessarily needs to be an adversarial relationship.
Remember how that guy was running for vice president and then he lost? Tim Walz professed his love for China. Thank God. This is like the liberal media even picked up on this. Politico and CBS are even writing about this. Articles about Walz's China ties. They're doing it now. They didn't do it when he ran for president. Now, a new report is going even deeper. Breitbart and the Government Accountability Institute detailing how the Communist Party is operating in Minnesota with top politicians like Tim Walz. We know he went to China like a dozen or more times. Who goes to China that many times unless you have business there? I mean, that's why Hunter Biden went there on Air Force Two to get $2 billion for a private equity fund he had no experience in. But Walz is even pictured with these top Chinese dignitaries at fundraisers in Minnesota. But it gets even more problematic. The top Chinese official in Minnesota used his outpost to collect COVID supplies from America and then ship them to a Wuhan hospital. Hold up a sec here. Remember when the media freaked out over Trump giving a few COVID tests to Putin while Tim Walz was giving our supplies to China? I mean, what is up with this? Eric Eggers, vice president of the Government Accountability Institute, which is behind this, obviously, this whole story. How deep does this go?
It's very deep, and it's great to be with you, Carl, as always. You know, we said from the beginning, the moment Tim Walz got named to the ticket, it's incredibly curious that you swap out Joe Biden as president, whose son obviously has extensive ties to China, with somebody else than Tim Walz, who seems to have even deeper ties. Not only is he ideologically aligned with the Chinese Communist Party, but obviously he invited them to be in his backyard. That's what this new report details. A 10-minute drive from the governor's mansion in St. Paul, Minnesota, houses a building where a number of different Chinese Communist Party affiliated organizations were operating, all together tied to something called the United Front, which Xi Jinping has called his magic weapon when it comes to destabilizing countries and governments that they've targeted. They clearly have targeted the United States. And so I think the big takeaway from this report, which we were proud to partner with Breitbart to produce, is that we dodged a bullet. You know, you hear about the tariffs and the economic pushback, but the reality is all that's because China has not taken the fentanyl problem seriously. Right. And there's no chance they would have taken it seriously with somebody as sympathetic to China as the Harris-Walz administration would have been.
Well, Eric, another story that your government accountability group has been hard on right now is genetic testing company 23andMe. They filed for bankruptcy, obviously, and the judge today has given the okay for all the DNA data from like 15 million people to be sold to the highest bidder. This is a gold mine. Advertisers, health companies, pharmaceutical companies, but also foreign adversaries. I mean, could you imagine being able to design a disease that only affects a genetic profile of 15 million Americans?
Well, luckily, there's no chance of that happening because China's an ally and a friend, right? No, of course, that's not true. That's one of the reasons why we had real concerns about TikTok. China's actively stealing digital data through TikTok. They might have been doing it through DeepSeek as well. You remember that AI fraud. And so why wouldn't we be concerned? I think you used the phrase gold mine appropriately. When Ancestry.com, you know, a sort of rival to 23andMe was sold, they went to a private equity firm for $4.7 billion. And so I think when Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, who we never agree with, is telling consumers to actively delete their information, it's because there's a very real threat that people who submitted their information to this company may have it used by somebody they didn't give it to for a purpose they didn't agree to. That's absolutely on the table, and it's a real problem.
Here's the other thing, too. It's not like you can go back and you know, it's not you can change your address. Like, this is your genetic makeup, okay? And they're saying, you know, they're going to store this data safely and all this stuff, but there is in their privacy policy, it says, quote, if we're ever involved in a bankruptcy, merger, acquisition, reorganization, or sale of assets, your personal information may be accessed, sold, or transferred as part of that transaction, and this privacy statement will apply to your personal information as transferred to the new entity. But a new entity has it.
No, absolutely. You know, it speaks to kind of a fundamental paradigm shift that's happened in our culture over the last 2 decades. It used to be that companies would pay a lot of money for market research to find out about customers so they could tailor advertisements towards them. But now we've been sold a lie that we should pay companies to collect information about us. You know, we invite the Amazon, the Alexas into our home. We invite these devices that collect our information, then sell it to people, and then not only sell it to other people, but they use it to try to sell us things we don't actually want. We're manipulated all the time. It's one of the real problems we have in our society. And so the idea that companies can now not just know what we say in emails, but who we are fundamentally down to our DNA is incredibly terrifying.
Yeah, but I mean, how much value is actually in this for, I mean, look, they can sell it to another company in America, but that company in America could turn around and just give it to anybody they want under their new policy, right?
No, that's absolutely correct. And that's why you don't hear real policy solutions coming from any governments who should be, or government leaders who should be in charge of regulating these things. The policy solution you hear coming from government leaders is delete your data. That is the only thing that you have the ability to fight back against, because, as you said, the user agreement basically gives this company the right to do this.
I remember when I started my first MySpace account, and I was like, man, all this data going online seems like a bad idea. And here we are, like 20-something years later. Eric Eggers, appreciate it, my man.